Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. My name is John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic? Let's do it. Police officers of Reddit. Who's the most corrupt officer you've ever known? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
An off-duty police officer was drunk driving and crashed into a man on the highway and killed him. He never went to jail. The officer got a call of a break-in and was given the description of the suspect. They instead shot and killed the homeowner who was fighting off the suspect. They shot the homeowner like 7 times. That officer is still working instead of being charged with homicide. Grandfather was a firefighter but had cop friends. One of them, on their deathbed, told my grandfather, and I believe it was his daughter, about how when he was a sergeant, he would go out at closing time with a certain turtley congressman who was a judge at the time to collect payments from bars that stayed open past certain times. They would go to about 15 spots and get an envelope at each one. At the end of the night, he and another officer would each get one of the envelopes. I'm in Northern Ireland, and this wasn't me, but I have a story. It happened in the 80s, and my mom knew the sister of the man who was killed. There was a police officer that liked to drink at the local pub, and everyone knew it. One night, he's almost blackout drunk when he gets into his car, so drunk in fact, that someone else had to put the keys into the ignition and turn it for him. They sent him off anyway, and to everyone's complete surprise, he plows into a young man on a motorbike and kills him. He was so drunk he wasn't even aware of what happened, and I believe he just fell asleep in his car at the scene. When all was said and done, the investigation concluded he kept his job, his license, and his freedom, while the family of the man who was killed was told it was just a freak accident and no one was at fault. Everyone in the community knew exactly what had happened. The officer faced 0 consequences, and it didn't even stop him from drunk driving. My great-uncle worked for the LAPD until about 15 years ago. He was the most racist POS I've ever met in person. He used to get drunk and brag about hurting people on the job. One time he told us that he got called to a domestic dispute and the woman, who had been abused, was hysterical, so he hit her some to calm her down. He was eventually forced to retire with full benefits. Turns out he was abusing my great-aunt too. She left him, and we haven't seen him since. Good riddance. In LA 2015, I had just moved there a few months prior. We pick up our friend to go to a rehearsal. We stop to get pizza. I'm like 98% sure it was the Pizza Hut in the Fashion District, but I could be wrong. Anyways, we're waiting in the lobby for a pizza. It was totally dead and kinda run down. A cop walks in with shades on, looks at us, walks to the counter, sets down a black bag, turns around and walks out. The clerk comes from the kitchen, grabs the bag and brings it to the back. They didn't even see each other. No words exchanged, like it was routine maybe. That's it. That's the end. We all looked at each other like, what the fuck? It was weird AF, and I wish I knew what actually happened. My kid's grandfather was a corrupt cop, caught up in a huge corruption sting in NSW in the 90s. I don't know if mafia underworld related. He had a choice. Dob in your bosses and be a witness or go to jail. He chose to snitch. His family was moved interstate, WPP for 10 years, rent paid for 10 years. He and his wife given new jobs, then their kids given new names, etc. After 10 years, I got a payout of $500,000 and am no longer in WPP. He was corrupt AF and literally got rewarded 10 years rent-free and $500,000. They missed out on nothing and traveled back to see their family often. I met the son, fell pregnant, and he dropped the bombshell at 6 months. Hey babe, I'm in the witness protection program. My real name is, sadly, blank. That relationship didn't last. He's dead now. My kid's grandfather. Some story she'll have to tell her own kids. I'm not a cop, but I used to flip houses in Florida before the 06-08 crash. I took on a project in a predominantly African American community in Cocoa, Florida, to boost the values of that neighborhood. Once I dropped the for sale sign, a white police officer came by to make an offer way below the market value, even for that community. I politely told him to go off. After he left, one of the neighbors came by and asked me what happened. After I told him about my experience, he informed me that this cop owned another house in the neighborhood that is only rented to crackheads, and the rest of the neighbors were pissed about it and thanked me for not selling to him. I later verified the cop was the owner of the crack house on the property appraiser's website. Edit. I forgot to add that following the encounter, cops in that city routinely followed me and eventually ticketed me for expired tags 1 day after my birthday, 3 days before the month ended. I always renewed my tags on the last Friday of my birth month, but there was no effort to investigate the crack house 5 houses down the road from my project house. A member of my extended family briefly served as the chief of police in Globe, Arizona. Within the first month on the job, he uncovered missing department equipment, including a razor, quads, and other valuable items. Determined to get answers, he called a meeting to question the department about the missing gear. That night, 3 officers showed up at his home with a chilling warning. If he kept digging, he wouldn't have to worry about living. The next day, he resigned and told us what happened. Crazy stuff. Thomas Sparks, Justin Jenkins, Jeff Legault, and a few others in the Johnson City, Tennessee Police Department. The city of 100,000 people just settled a lawsuit for $28 million that alleged these officers accepted weekly payments from a local drug dealer and child predator, Sean Williams, to look the other way. They are allegedly to have squashed anywhere from 25 to 100 SA cases targeting this one man. The police department had video evidence of him committing crimes against 2 children and almost 100 women in their evidence locker for almost 3 years that they had collected during an investigation. They allegedly kept this evidence under wraps as collateral to ensure continued payment. An arrestable charge against Sean was solidified after internal pushback. They dismissed the U.S. attorney assigned to their office for insisting on charging him. She is suing the city as well separately. Instead of arresting him, they tipped him off and let him skip town. Officer Legault allegedly arrested one victim under false pretenses in an attempt to retaliate for her pressing a case forward. The city manager in charge of the police department, Kathy Ball, attempted to buy Sean Williams' condo while he was on the run. Her agent, Shannon Castillo, handles all government real estate deals and served as the buyer and seller agent for both Kathy Ball and Sean Williams due to her friendship with both parties. They were doing document dead drops and keeping an eye on Sean's properties to tip him off in case of any law enforcement activities. All parties knew of Sean's activities. All of them. The officers are still employed, as well as the city manager and real estate agent. The lawsuit's damage comes out to almost $1,000 per household after municipal insurance kicks in. Somehow, we still can't get national traction on this story.
I think like most professions, there are great people and there are not great people. I think that the negative cases are often, and rightly so, sensationalized in the media, and there is definitely a 2-tier justice system, not only with the wealthy, but with law enforcement and facing justice. So it's a difficult road to hoe, and we keep our opinions where they are. But I'm grateful for the good people out there protecting us, and would like to see more light shed on the bad ones.
Not a police officer, but I was training to be a correctional officer and quit after the first day over bullshit I saw. Some context. About 10 to 12 years ago, at a now closed prison in Louisiana, I'm a white guy, and was probably 24 at the time. Two major things made me leave that day and find other work. The training officer, like myself and the 7 or 8 other new hires, were all white. While given a tour of the prison yard, he kept talking about showing them who had the power. He smiled and said, "Watch this." He took a pen from his shirt pocket and dropped it on the ground. Then he yelled for a black inmate who was doing some landscaping about half a football field away to come over. As the inmate jogged over, the trainer said all inmates must run to you when called, like literally run. Once the inmate got to us and said, "Yes, sir," the trainer told him to pick up his pen and hand it to him. The inmate said, "Yes, sir," and did it. The trainer then said, "Go back to what you were doing." Again he said, "Yes, sir," and jogged back. This was in the July humid heat, by the way. The trainer and other hires all did this, chuckled together, as I thought to myself, what did I just see? Later, I was put in one of the housing units to shadow the 2 officers in there supervising the inmates, a white guy and a black guy. They took me to some bunks to show me how to do shakedowns to look for contraband. They had the inmate stand by his bed as they just wrecked his shit. I get you have to be thorough, but this is being done as another power trip move. The black officer finds a copy of the black inmate's Quran, holds it up and starts asking him, "You really believe this shit?" and goes on to mock his religion. I'm not a religious guy, but again I thought, what the... I finished the day, and as soon as I left I called my old boss to see if I could come back. Thankfully they were happy to have me back. Military law enforcement, but I've worked with civilian law enforcement. When I was new, super new, I rode patrol with a guy who had ties to the local area. Dude was speeding on his phone without a seatbelt on regularly and didn't carry any less lethals. Didn't know this at the time. He started pulling people over left and right for doing 27 in a 25. He would brag about how many tickets he would hand out per shift. He started a competition that was quickly handled by superiors for most tickets handed out per week. A few weeks later, I was at a different post at the time, but my buddy worked the desk, dispatch. Over the radio, there was a lot of back and forth that I kinda just tuned out. Eventually, I heard a few interesting comments, and apparently that same officer mentioned above has planted evidence during vehicle searches and whipped his dick out in front of people entering the base. Because of his connections, he was just moved to a different shift. On those shifts, he got caught up for excessive force, no surprise, and sexual harassment. I'm going to have a different take on this, and I'm going to get downvoted, but I feel like I can shed some insight. I'm a police officer who has graduated from the academy within the last few years. I can honestly say that newer cops are the ones that are the most dedicated to improving the public image of how people view us. I didn't get into this to bust heads or do any of that. Uvalde and what happened with Floyd made me do this. I hated what I saw and felt like I could make a difference. I understand that there's some animosity toward police, and rightfully so. I just hope that trend declines and the bad ones get ousted and indicted as they should. I know people on Reddit usually hate cops, and I know I'm going to get some ACAB comments, but just know that all of us subscribe to the mindset, LOL. Not all of us. Just my 2 cents. I had been an officer for about 7 to 8 years when I was asked to fill in working security at a football game, local high school. I was out on the perimeter when a lady came up, looked at my name tag, and asked if I was a certain officer. The name was Lieutenant. I told her that he was not working that night. About an hour later, I was in my parking lot when the same lady drove up to me. Her 16-year-old cheerleader daughter was with her. She asked her daughter, "Is this him?" Daughter said, "No, Mom, that's not him." By the time, I'm really wondering what's going on. Mom tells me that her daughter has always dated losers, and she was so glad to hear that her daughter was finally dating someone who was respectable. It turns out her 16-year-old daughter was dating my LT, not knowing he was 38, married, with 3 kids. No ma'am, this isn't me. I'm married and I don't date high school girls. I turned and left the area. That LT eventually became an assistant chief and continued sleeping with younger women, even when his wife was dying of cancer years later. He was a sack of crap. Not a cop, but me, white, and my 3 friends, who were black, got our boy car robbed from us by a bunch of gorditos holding guns. One of them even popped off their sawed-off shotgun to get our attention. Cop showed up and started questioning my black friends about it, if it was a drug deal gone wrong, and assuming they were gang members and it was our fault. When they asked me questions, they asked me if I was okay, if I was forced here, etc. Really highlighted to me how police go about assuming in investigations. There was a deputy at my husband's old office that was 3D printing and selling ghost guns. When multiple people told the sheriff about it, they were told to stop being jealous of the deputy and not to tattle. That same deputy also was the only officer to work her fiance's crash, where he wasn't investigated for DUI and driven home. This was the same department that had a deputy leave drugs in their patrol vehicle when they left their car at the mechanic shop, instead of putting them into evidence, and the mechanic found them and took TikTok of themselves doing lines of coke on the patrol car hood. Don't worry, he got promoted because he's a good boy, born and raised in the county. I've got a few from just one cop. Guy was a total piece of shit, but most of it was just him being a drunken idiot. He got pulled over for 3 DUIs in a single night. He got out of all of them because he flashed his badge. He crashed into a ditch and blew out a tire, or the other way around. A 4th cop showed up after the first 3 played catch and release, realized he was drunk and just drove his dumbass home. He handed a loaded firearm to a drunk teenager whom he got drunk. Sold contraband to inmates when he had to do his rotation in the jail. Got drunk and fell in front of a bar, lost his front teeth. Accused an innocent person who tried to help him of assault. Tried meth for weight loss. Hit on every single girlfriend a friend would bring over. Got his girlfriend pregnant so she wouldn't leave him. It almost worked. But when she was almost due, he spent every night drinking and talking about how it was his last shot at freedom. Discharged firearms constantly in city limits, usually, as you guessed, while intoxicated. Attempted to essay at least 3 women that I know about. He got very drunk one night and passed out in his own vomit. His mom was dropping his son off the next morning. He walked in on his dad passed out in his own vomit. At least his mom reamed him out. The kid eventually got primary placement with the baby mama because the dad was such a mess, even a badge didn't help him. I had a brother-in-law who was a small-town cop in a college town. He got kicked off the force for pulling over attractive college girls on traffic violations and then offering to let them go without a citation if they would go out on a date with him. 2 of the college girls happened to be friends. They compared notes, realized that it was an ongoing practice of depredation, and put up a notice on a bulletin board. Other girls came forward, and they all went to the chief of police. Brother-in-law was not charged with abuse of authority. He was definitely guilty of it, but the chief allowed him to sign a confession and to resign from the police department. He became a security guard at a local cannery. In Detroit, 2 cops tried to pull over a vehicle for speeding. Car sped up. The officers initiated a pursuit. During the chase, the 19-year-old driver sped through a residential neighborhood and crashed into a tree. At the time of the chase, the officers did not use their sirens and only turned their lights on at the end. DPD has a policy that prohibits high-speed chases unless there's a violent felony. Statistics show that they result in a higher risk for crashes and death of other drivers. To avoid the consequence of the unauthorized chase, the 2 DPD officers deliberately shut off their lights, lied in their report, and claimed they did not pursue the vehicle. After the crash, the squad car left the scene of the accident without rendering aid or calling in an ambulance, and waited for a resident to call 911 about the crash. Then the officers responded because they were in the area. I was roommates with a couple of criminal justice majors in college. One got a job in a jail but was fired for roughing up inmates. He later got another gig, was injured on his job, and now collects a little bit of disability, and his life is a mess. My other roommate got a job in Vallejo. This is where the Gone Girl case happened. Even after all of this, he maintains that the couple lied and set the whole kidnapping up. Also, he said there was a fireman who lived outside of town. Night shift police officers would go there because he had a bed set up. They would sleep all night unless they got a call. They would not patrol neighborhoods or anything. Vallejo is a pretty rough place, and the police staff were understaffed by a long shot. Still, dudes would be sleeping all night. I remember his wife commenting on how he has more energy than she does throughout the day, even though he worked all night. Kevin P. Crum, probationary officer from Champaign, Illinois PD. He moved from Kentucky to Champaign with his wife and kid. He left behind his secret mistress and an even more secret child in his former Kentucky place of residence. On August 30th, 2003, Crum was caught by a security guard trespassing at 2 a.m. in a Kentucky business parking lot. He was observed putting on a wig and body armor and retrieving a long gun from the trunk of his car. Further investigation by police revealed several more firearms inside the car and an actual checklist for the murder of a child and other persons. Crum was about to break into his mistress's trailer and kill everyone inside, including her, his own child, and several other relatives of the mistress. Crum was going to stage the scene as a burglary gone bad. Crum had stolen a license plate from a vehicle in Champaign to place on his vehicle, was in possession of at least one stolen firearm, and had collected material from several sources to spread around the scene in an attempt to contaminate any DNA analysis. This was all due to his mistress filing for child support. He received an 18-year sentence. I used to work at a Mexican restaurant. The local state troopers had a deal in place with us, our side. If they called in and ordered lemonades to go, it was actually margaritas in a to-go cup, which is illegal. This was either when the shift was over and they were headed home, or they were off duty. When they were in the restaurant, they'd order the blue light special, which was this really huge fajita quesadilla with tons of ingredients, but we'd only charge them $5. Their side. Anytime there was a roadblock, the two guys who were in the country illegally always got waved through. If there was a roadblock somewhere else that they weren't working on, we'd always get an anonymous phone call letting us know. Less important, if we ever got stopped for speeding on the way to work, we never got a ticket. Worked at the University of Utah PD. The detectives took drugs home and used them. Our IT guy was on the S offender registry for his own kid. Many of the officers were sleeping together, gay and straight. Our chief was banging a dispatcher and a sergeant. He tried to fire a different sergeant, rightly, for theft. Yes, it was an actual pattern of theft, but the thief brought the sexual harassment case to the forefront, and a few of us sued the department. The university tried to cover it up. The chief retired for health reasons, but got a new chief job at a different school in Texas. I learned I'm an honest person who has no business in law enforcement, took my settlement, and started a new career. This experience has tainted law enforcement for me for life. My lieutenant said that people generally only call police once in their lives, representing us well. Don't victimize the caller twice. We need more like him. Wife was a dispatcher in Central Washington for a number of years. When we were first started dating, one of her deputies was routinely stalking his ex-wife and her boyfriend, often sitting outside her house while both on and off duty, engaging in intimidations of the boyfriend, etc. On one of these excursions, he scared away the boyfriend and proceeded to R the ex-wife. She reported the R, and he was arrested shortly thereafter. He ended up hanging himself while awaiting trial. I had gone on a ride-along with another one of my wife's deputies just a month or so before all of this occurred, and met him for the first and last time on a call to a suspected gang fight. Seeing how he talked to and interacted with suspects all day, I can assure you he was the type of officer that is headlining in the media these days. I was absolutely zero surprised when this all came to light not long after. José Manuel Villarejo, a former commissioner of the Spanish National Police, is considered corrupt due to his involvement in a series of illegal activities during his career. He was accused of leading a network of illegal espionage, extortion, influence peddling, and corruption within the police force. Villarejo used his power to obtain confidential information and blackmail businessmen, politicians, and officials in exchange for money and favors. He's also linked to numerous political corruption cases, such as the Gürtel scandal. His involvement in the Villarejo case revealed his ability to manipulate institutions and abuse his power for personal gain. After his arrest in 2017, evidence emerged of his ties to illegal practices for years, solidifying his image as one of the biggest examples of corruption within Spain's law enforcement. Used to work for a police officer who owned a race car shop. He was the only officer in the city to have actually shot someone. He used to tell us the dude clearly had a BB gun and he knew it too, and he said things like, he was going to get killed one day anyway, might as well put the dog down now. Guy ND'd into the shop roof one day drunk off his ass. Hated him so much. I work for U.S. local law enforcement in a support capacity. They're like any other people with hobbies and families and such, and when you talk to them, they seem caring and polite. That's just the surface. Once you see the thin blue line, or Punisher logos, or medieval helmet logos, or shields, or giant pickup trucks, compensating for something, on their sheer amount of guns and ammunition among many other things, you get the feeling that there's something wrong with these people. They're so indoctrinated and it happens very quickly. The peer pressure to go along is immense. Don't talk politics, religion, education, cars, or guns and you're fine. But if you do, you'll find out how batshit crazy they really are. It's a gang, a cult, in the truest sense. They truly think they're medieval knights, sworn by God to keep the peace and protect the realm, and that anyone that doesn't subscribe to their ideology is wrong and will be punished. What's funny is that all of it is open to interpretation, the law, the Bible, all of it, by them and them alone. They think that they themselves are above all of that as well, unless they're caught, and then they try to cover it up as best they can. IA operates on plausible deniability, deflect as much as possible, but when punishment is inevitable, they make sure you have a fall guy. I worked for my campus police department, did dorm security. It had a heavy presence since the university was in the middle of a city. The chief was caught trying to solicit sex from a teen and had the username HotCop2006. Then a few years later, the deputy that oversaw our department was charged with possession of CP.